Good morning. This is Playing to Win with Mark Henderson Leary and my good friend Brad Freyer. How are you this morning, man?
Fantastic, man. How about yourself?
I'm well. Is countdown? Is that loud for you? It's very loud in my
It's
ear.
it's very. It sounds like, and for anybody that's listening or going to be listening, we get counted down with the 10-second beep, and it's got like this little background rhythm to it, and it's like beep beep, but it goes 10 to 0, and there used to be a video arcade game, and it was a race car driving game, and it would
Oh
go
yeah,
beep
yeah.
sound like, except for 10 times louder and 3 times longer.
But we're apparently off to the races. So, man, how
We
you doing, man?
are. It's good, man. Good weekend. Good week last week. Very productive week. Got a action packed week this week. So yeah, all's well.
Good, good. I
Well,
feel the same. I feel like the first 3 weeks now of the year have been clicking off, and I did have some curveballs last week that threw me off, some things I wanted to get done, and so I was feeling grateful that I had done some of the work before, and that I really reinforced for me that discipline is about working on the days when you don't feel the pressure to, so you can get caught up, keep caught up, and just making sure that you're ready for the curveballs. You have to do the work in advance. Otherwise, having a little bit in the reserve tank isn't what you need on the days, especially right now, because the curveballs come at us. They seem to come pretty big, pretty fast. And having a reserve tank and a full 5 gallon container of gas is a smart call as well.
yeah, for sure. For sure. Yeah, man. And making sure that you know what those activities are every day and getting them knocked out. And there's going to be days where you don't feel like it, and it's okay from time to time to punt.
Well, you
But
have to punt. Yeah, that's actually. I mean,
yeah,
using our. I think that's one thing I learned actually, is that there are days and plays when
yeah,
it's the smart call is punt. Let's just
yeah,
switch this. Let's change the game. It's not giving up. It's a different strategy that gives you
that's
some
right.
time and some space.
It's all about field position.
Yeah,
Which it can't go unsaid this morning, right? That Tom Brady and Drew Brees, two gentlemen in their 40s, not unlike you and I,
that's right.
are are still competing at the highest levels in the NFL. Um, and Tom Brady's taking his team to the next round. I mean, the effort that goes into maintaining, and we talk about routine, we talk about consistency, we talk about having a game plan and a strategy. He's the poster child for that. I mean, the effort that
For
he
sure.
puts into taking care of himself and practicing, and even when he was younger, the time he spent preparing for games. People, it's the story of legends, right? The amount of time
For
that he
sure.
would watch films and study, so the game would just slow down because he would know what was coming before it would happen.
So let's talk about the discipline piece of this, because personally, the lesson I learned about discipline is that it's. I went to music school for one thing, and learning about discipline and practice and what it was to be a successful musician. Talent was just sort of like permission to play. It's table stakes. If you have talent, if you can play something good today, that doesn't mean anything about how successful you're going to be. It was very clear in music school that there was a difference between those people who were willing to put that work in, day out, to the sacrifice of everything else that everybody else seemed to want to do. And the vast, if anybody's ever either been to art school or music school, you know that the vast majority of people in music school, if you look at their careers, are not music related, and so it's you really have to have that sharpness. But all that to say that that discipline is easy to underestimate. Even when you look at somebody like Tom Brady and you read what he does and what they, as a family, they do, it's insane. It's totally insane.
Yeah.
And the path to that is not, I believe, is not about deciding, okay, I'll just copy Brady. I think it starts before that. I think it starts with you asking yourself, what in my life am I willing to sacrifice for at that level, and make sure you're aligned. Because if you don't like
Hmm.
playing football the way that I mean, to the degree that Brady does, and it's probably impossible to calculate exactly how high that number is if you put a number on it. If you don't love it at that level, you're never going to be able to maintain that discipline. So you got to start first by doing that groundwork of like, what do we stand for? What do I stand for? What matters most? What can I do? What journey can I enjoy under suffering conditions the most, so I can create the best outcomes?
Yeah. Well, and I'll even temper that down a little bit, because for a lot of people that we engage with, their daily professional world is not comparable to being an NFL quarterback, right? Between the income and the glam and the excitement and the fact that you're playing a game for a living, a lot of the folks that we work with, they work because they have to. They got to have a paycheck. They got to have, put food on the table. Even the business owners, they might be financially independent, but they're not at a place where they're ready or willing to retire yet. And so even when, maybe it's not a labor of love, or it's not, I think that's one of the challenges that we've seen happen over the last several years is, everybody's encouraged to pursue professions that will fulfill them, or that they're passionate about, or there's not one of those for everybody. Sometimes you have to get up and you have to go to work, and you have to do a job that, would it be the top 5? Maybe not, but doesn't mean you shouldn't kick ass at it and put everything into it every day and have a game plan for growing. And I had my little brother, which by the way, he'll be noticing that I don't have wires anymore, because he's like, dude, get rid of the wires. It's terrible.
Good for you. Good for you.
But when he was first going,
he doesn't like me.
No, he loves you. Yeah. But he said, look, when he was going into the work world, his first job out was one that he just really wasn't keen on. And I said, man, look, it doesn't matter where you start. I said, but just do your absolute best at every job, and people will take notice. If you kill it at whatever you're doing, an opportunity will arise either where you are or somewhere else. But you got to know what killing it means, right? And you got to know what achieving and success means. And you really have to have that vision of where you are and where you want to go. I mean, you and I were talking the other day about vision and how lack of clarity can create so many problems. And we were talking about the Texans specifically. Well, we started talking about how Houston sports franchises seem to be in a death spiral.
They don't desire fans any longer. They
no longer desire fans,
because they are knocking. If that's their goal, they are knocking it out of the park.
They don't seem to have it all together. Yeah, and then, but you see the Texans, who came off an abysmal season, albeit they were that close in 5-6 games from having a playoff run.
Yeah.
They've got tremendous talent, but having gone through the OB days and where they allowed him to kind of run with it, they're making big changes, and changes that should be exciting, changes that should be bringing energy and enthusiasm to the franchise and to the community and to the fan base. Somehow they managed to turn that into, earmuffs, kids, but a shit show. I mean, how do you leave a situation that wasn't working? You're in a position now to create enthusiasm and energy and excitement, and you botch that. Where did they go wrong, Mark? From a leadership perspective, this isn't going to turn into a sports talk show, but from a leadership perspective, how do they bungle that? Bungle? bungle? How do they bungle that?
Well, part of the problem is we don't really know what's going behind the scenes. So that's the part we can comment on, I think, most obviously. The commitment to communication and transparency apparently is low, or at least the effectiveness is very low because we don't really know what's going on. And if that you can totally, we're fans, like, they're figuring stuff out. But the beacon of all things, I mean, there's two guys in Houston that we all know, and just sort of the lighthouse of morale for Houston football is J.J. Watt and Deshaun Watson, and when the guys that just like it's really difficult to sort of overstate how high quality and how much positivity radiates from these individuals, and when they're losing faith, like you got their phone numbers, right? Give them a call and and make sure they're on board, because if they're not on board, everything falls apart. And to kind of tie this connection together, talking about, what does it matter? If you're, Tom Brady and you're committed your whole life, all these series of tactics, and you're saying, well, some days you don't have a job you like. It's like, well, you hopefully have a life you like, and hopefully there's a point to it. And if you can, this metaphor works perfectly. Like, I have a crap job in whatever organization. Maybe I'm on the practice squad. Maybe I'm suffering through a rebuild on the team. And I don't like the job today. What makes it worth it is we all know where we're going and we know why we're sacrificing. I'm trying to, save some money, honey, so we can buy that house. I'm trying to, what are we doing that has a higher purpose? So you can be your best now and sacrifice now. But you look at your bellwether players who are just like, everybody's going to do what Deshaun Watson and J.J. Watt say. Like, just all you have to do is get them bought off on it, and everybody else will follow. And I just cannot overstate how rookie, terrible, bad, leadership must be. It's the worst of the worst. If you don't understand the importance of those guys and how you have to take care of them psychologically for anything else positive to happen.
Yeah, and look, once again, as you and I stated, or you stated earlier, we don't know what happened behind closed doors. We don't know the conversations. All we see is what everybody else sees, which is, the press and the articles. But it's clear that there is something afoul. But from a leadership perspective, right? There's two paths that you can take, and it's interesting because, there's a perception now that with the millennial workforce and the workforce ages coming down, that the millennials have a tendency to want to be more involved in decisions. They want to have a seat at the table, and they were talking about it specifically in sports, that the players nowadays want to have a seat at the table.
Yeah, that's so true. I love what you just did there. Okay, keep going with that. That's exactly right.
And so, and I think it's the same in companies, right? I think, small businesses, mid-size, maybe even up to the larger companies, they want to feel like their voices are heard. They want to feel like they have a seat at the table. And so as from a leadership perspective, that is a very dangerous place to play. It's dangerous because, there's two ways to look at it. If I'm Cal McNair, there's two schools of thought I could have. I could have the school of thought that says, hey, Deshaun, I'm not going to come out onto the field and tell you how to drop back, how to go through your progressions, and how to pass the ball, because you have a skill set that I don't have. And so I'm going to let you do what you're great at. At the same time, I don't want you stepping into the boardroom and telling me how to assess talent from an executive position and run a franchise, because I have a skill set that you don't have. So let's formulate a team where we all have our job functions and we trust and rely on each other to do their job function to their best, but we're all pushing to the same goal. So that's one approach Cal could have, right?
Yeah, for sure.
Hey, everybody has a job function, everybody stay in their lane. The other thing is kumbaya, right? Everybody's going to have a seat at the table. Everybody's going to be heard. The problem is when you begin to message that, and this is my theory of what happened. When you begin to message that and you tell people, hey, I'd love to get your opinion on this. I'd love to get your perspective on this. But they stop there. That's all they say. What the other person hears is, I get to decide. My opinion is going to matter. But then if they choose something other than what that person's want, then all hell breaks loose, right? The problem that a lot of leadership has is when they try to lead by consensus, right? When they try to lead by consensus, the problem that happens is they still have to make the tough decisions as the owner, as the president, as the leader. And sometimes those tough decisions are going to be counterintuitive to what everybody else might want. So where they drop the ball, theory, where they drop the ball is by saying, hey, Mark, let's pretend you're Watson, right? I say, hey, Mark, I'd love to get some feedback from you on, that's right. Never mind. You're no longer Deshaun.
I like that.
I would say, hey, look, I want to get your feedback on this, our new GM hire. I'd love to get your perspective and what type of attributes you'd be looking for. But Deshaun, what's important for you to understand is that we're going to be going through the vetting process. And I need you to agree that whichever decision we make, if it's in line with what you wanted, or if it's not in line with what you wanted, I need you to know that we listen to you and that we care about your opinion. And we made a decision, rightly or wrongly, that you have to get behind. So if you're going to participate in sharing, we want to hear your feedback, but regardless of what decision we make, we have to know that you're going to be on board with it. Right? And that's where people drop the ball. They don't close the loop and tell people, you know what, your opinion matters to me. It doesn't mean I'm going to use it. And that doesn't mean that it doesn't matter to them. Right now, everybody's talking about Deshaun being disrespected. Deshaun's being disrespected. How is he being disrespected? He's being paid $140 million to play a game for a living. I'm sorry. But what the perception seems to be is that someone asked him for his opinion and then they just ignored it. Now that could be the case, but maybe it's not the case. Maybe he shared their opinion, but his opinion was inconsistent with what they wanted.
Everything you're saying is right. There's a
complex. Oh, come on, not everything.
There's a complex formula, because the way you described it, kind of like the structured approach and then like the unstructured approach. It's a continuum. There's a somewhat complex recipe to sort of pull apart. It is important to start. I mean, when I work with a company, we ask that question: what is the right structure? What are the functions? And that way we can put the right people in the right seats to who's going to decide what, who's going to be accountable to what. And if you don't know what you want to do, it's very difficult. And this kumbaya approach ends up being kind of the problem, because like, we don't know what we need. Let's put everybody in a room. And then you see this happening where like somebody says, we got what we need. I'm out of here. And it's the structure falls apart. There's one ingredient that it has to be put in play here, and that is you have to win. Like, you have to be right for any of those models to work. And we know ownership is kind of notoriously bad at doing these types of things. They can get like the right leadership in place, and then things start to fall from there. But like when there's nobody but the owner in the room, the decisions are kind of all over the place. So there is this winning component. And I know everybody says 110 million, 140 million for Deshaun, just throw the ball. After like $1 million, nothing really matters. It's all just like, it's just more gravy. This guy did not show up to just get paid and not win. I'm sorry. It's what matters. I agree with that. Yeah. What matters is winning. And if he's on a team that's not making decisions, that leads him to believe we're marching towards winning, it's a mutiny. And that's like, even in the military, there are protocols for when like the leader makes a decision so bad that we're all going to die. There's a way to handle that. And so, that's the state. The communication is so bad. There's a loss of confidence in the leadership. And like, even if you're following the right instructions out of the playbook and you're still losing, you got to own that. You, as a leader, you got to figure that out. That's on you. And you can win the battle lose the battle and lose the war, even if you're following the directions right out of Sun Tzu. You can't do. You have to win, and you got to make decisions that are that are communicating to that and inspiring confidence. You have to find.
So which side are you on? Are you, and not talking about, a literal side, but when you look at leadership approach or leadership methodology, are you on the side of giving everybody a seat at the table and leading by consensus, or are you on the side of everybody has a lane, do your job function to the best?
Well, it's a formula. So you have to ask the question: what are the functions? What are the jobs? What's the right thing for the organization? And if you've got a highly expert place of organization, you're going to be a little bit better off getting the experts in place into their roles. That doesn't eliminate get the feedback from the world strategy. What we know about getting feedback, though, is that if we ask people for their opinion, and we don't use it in some way, we were better off not asking in the first place, because people want to feel heard. So you have to know you're messing with something of great importance. So if you say or ask for feedback, your next steps are critical, even if you're not going to. It's very common. For example, say we go to a company and we say, "How's it going out there? Do you love working here? Are the customers good? You get the resources and the tools?" And you get this flood of feedback, and it's like, okay, there's 10 critical things that we heard you say. And if you don't say anything, you're in trouble. But if you say, okay, we heard 10 things, and here's the good news: we've got a plan for the top 3. The bad news is the bottom 7, we couldn't fit them in the budget and the time. We have heard you, though, and we need your patience for the next 1 year, 2 years while we work through that. We'll keep you posted on the top 3, however. Thank you for the feedback. We couldn't do this without you. That's the archetypal way to respond to that. Not like we'll do everything and then, I found out the GM was hired via Twitter. Awesome. That's not closed loop feedback. That's not how you do it.
Yeah. And so to continue down that path, because there's also leaders who want to have consensus before they pull the trigger. And so there's something that they want to do. And I've seen this, and maybe you've seen it as well in your business, where, a owner of a company will come to me and he'll say, "Hey, look, we really want to develop our sales team." And so we'll talk about where they are, where they want to go, and what it's going to take to get there, and the methodology and the tools we can provide and all that stuff. And I mean, we'll be on the same page, and he's like, "Yes, this sounds great. Love it. Da, 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 da." And then we'll say, "Well, what would you suggest the next steps are?" "Well, I'd really like to go to my team and see how they feel about it." And so whenever they suggest that they're going to engage their team, I always ask, "Are you a leader by consensus? Or is this just something that you want to test the water?" Because if they're leading by consensus, the next question has to be, well, what happens if one person says no? You got a sales team of 10. You go to them and say, "Hey, great news. I found, Brad Freyer at Sandler Training. They're going to come in. They're going to help us create process and methodology." And which, by the way, not a lot of people love someone coming in and telling them how to do their job differently. And so he goes to them and says, "Hey, great news. Here's what we have coming." If the owner of the company thinks it's in his best interest and the best interest of the company, but you've got someone who, hell, maybe they're not even a top performer. Maybe they're behind quota, and they say no, he's now put himself in a tough spot.
So I want to hit the word, and I want to just call it out: consensus. Right. Absolutely no place for it in real leadership where it matters. Here's the difference. Informed leadership, not leadership to consent. I do not need everybody to be kumbaya. I need to know what they know, though, and they can tell me.
Yes. Yeah, that's the breakdown of communication. Yeah. Because a lot of leaders will say, "Hey, I'd love your feedback. I'd love to hear what your opinion is," but they don't ever make the next statement, which is, "We're going to listen." It doesn't necessarily mean we're going to do what your suggestions are.
Yeah.
The
team doesn't even need that. They don't need to be. When you say, "I'm not going to do what you asked me to, and here's why, thanks for your feedback," they go, "Cool. I was heard. Yes. And I know what the plan is, and now I know how I fit in."
But if you don't manage the expectations up front, like if you're a small business owner and you call your team into the conference room and you say, "Hey, we're going to be making some strategic changes around here. Love to get your feedback." and they share with you their feedback, but you don't manage their expectations that you may or may not use their opinions. The ones that you choose to go against their opinions on, they're going to feel slighted. And it's only because we didn't manage the expectation. We didn't manage the expectation that, hey, regardless of what decision we make, I need everyone to agree to be on board and push forward. So if your opinion wasn't used, we heard it, we appreciate it, but we went a different way. We need you to be on board regardless.
Managing expectations is a great place to start. That's not the end of the. If you mess that part up, it's not all lost. You can mess that part up. How you close the loop is how you can save that. Okay, we heard
that's fair.
And prove it. Just prove it. Like I heard these 5 opinions, and I have carefully considered it, and we're going this path. That'll do it.
So we've only got 4 minutes left, but to close the loop on this conversation, if you had been Cal McNair, you heard Deshaun, his opinion. You chose a hire that clearly was against what Deshaun was looking for or what he thought would be best for the team. How would you have closed the loop if you were, and granted, we don't know what really happened behind closed doors, but if you were Cal McNair, you chose, I've already forgotten his name, New England.
Begins with a C, right? The New England
Sea Dog from New England. But if you chose someone that you knew was not in sync with what your star quarterback wanted, how would you have closed the loop? What would that conversation have sounded like?
Well, there's 2 assumptions, and one is if he's saying I don't care if I lose Deshaun Watson, who cares? I got other bigger, longer term plans. Then he's right on track for saying F off to everybody on the planet, and I respect his rebelliousness and consistency with his tough decisions. If, however, he was somebody who values the opinion of a bellwether culture, morale leader of teams and frankly NFL in many ways. I mean, these guys are absolutely top tier, future Hall of Famer, legendary people. If the cards are played right, then he and his team should be crystal clear that we need to create constant communication, and it doesn't matter what the decision process is as much as it's constant communication, and that and there's an appropriate enrollment of clarity, and say let's get the cards on the table. Where did we go wrong here? How can I help you be your position, be your best, and let me tell you what's on the table for you to work with and what's not. Set expectations very, very clearly.
All right, so you didn't answer my question, but since we only have now 2 minutes left, I'm going to answer my own question. Yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, Cal should have called Deshaun before it went public and said, hey, here's our game plan. We heard what you were looking for. Here's what we chose to do. Here's why we chose to do it. Want to make sure that we have an open line of communication if there's any concerns that you have, so that we can work through them together prior to it being, showing up on Twitter like the Hopkins trade.
Well, both. Well. Both of them were Twitter notifications. That's your clue, right? If this isn't the first time this happened, somebody, I just think like owners of NFL teams are not, this is going to sound crazy, they're not leaders, not necessarily. They're not necessarily leaders. They're in a leadership role a lot of times. We can't
put them all into the same bucket, because there definitely are some out there that guys would walk through.
That's what I mean. They're not necessarily a leader, and so people really look at these owners. I saw that happen with the 49ers, and it's like you don't. When there is somebody who's an owner, like if I own Google stock, if somehow I ended up owning all of Google, and they said, Mark, what do we do? Like, there's no guarantee that I have a clue of what they do. The roles are not equated at all. So you have to kind of stepwise into that. So it's natural that an owner could be ill-equipped to do this. But if you're at that bare metal,
and that's interesting too, because you don't. Yeah, because you don't hear Jamie Root's name mentioned at all in these conversations, and Jamie's the president, and he's done a good job of keeping himself out of the line of fire. Love you, Jamie. No sweat.
Well, and I can't imagine he's having a good time because his whole world is monetizing this, and so he needs good PR coverage, and he needs good people to love the team, and so he is a leader in that sense, and he's leading a sales organization, and
I think he's got a book out about leadership too. So
yeah, so Cal McNair's doing no favors for him right now.
We'll get Jamie to be a guest on the show sometime.
Yeah, we should do that.
Tell a story.
Well, we're out of time, brother.
And
I took all the time, didn't I?
This is perfect. Loved it.
All right, man. Well, what's your parting wisdom in the last 2 seconds?
Parting wisdom, man. As a leader, you have to choose which path you're going to go down, but know your plan depending on the path.
All right, guys. Go play to win. We'll see you next week. Till then, win.